Well, thank you so much for inviting me to your enchanted isle. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here, and what a wonderful class I had this afternoon. I thought we were going to workshop 2 poems each, and I had all these writing exercises. We could barely make it through 1 round. What fantastic, lit, on-fire poets I had. So thank you all so much. So I hear this was your community read, so everybody read it, right? So we're going to start with a little test and find out. It's actually one of the weirdest poems in the book. I wasn't sure if I should put it in the book. It's more of a performance piece than anything else. And it's called Hearing Test, List to Be. And there's a little story behind it, which was shortly after our father died, I woke up one morning and I couldn't hear out of one ear. And I ran to a doctor and got myself tested. And the girl in the booth, you know, would read these words to me, and I had to repeat them after her. And she wasn't my student, but she was the identical twin of one of my students. So I had this uncanny feeling that I knew her, but I didn't. And weirdly enough, the test really was test 2B. And while I was doing it, it had this uncanny effect on me. So I'm going to try it on you. And I've never done this in a chapel before, so it's kind of cool. It's a call and response poem. So I'm going to ask you to please close your eyes and concentrate very hard and repeat after me. Say ache.
Ache.
Say us.
Us.
Say him.
Him.
Say not.
Not.
Say me.
Me.
Say deaf.
Deaf.
Say odd.
Odd.
Say as.
As.
Say tree.
Tree.
Say young.
Young.
Say air.
Air.
Say that.
That.
Say does.
Does.
Say live.
Live.
Say move.
Move.
Say die.
Die.
Say then.
Then.
Say you.
You.
You passed. You can open your eyes now. So I'm going to go back and start at the beginning of the book and kind of hopscotch through, but more or less in order. So I'm going to start with the first poem, Dead Letters. A little story behind this too, which was, because I'm a poet, I only bought my first house quite recently, and I began to get mail for someone that I knew and loved who had died at my house, which is how I realized that he had lived there before me, and that inspired this poem. I also have a really lousy mailbox, maybe because I'm a poet, it flies open and things really do fly out of it. So. This is Dead Letters. I get letters for the dead. They blow out of the mailbox and into the snow. I find them encrusted in drifts or rippled and faded in spring, addressed to an old man I loved. Philip, lover of horses, I'm sorry she plowed your garden under. I would have tended it. Every envelope with your name I rip open, forbidden and uncanny. I hope bears the message you are somewhere. I would forward them. And then a little teaching poem. I have been teaching first Western Civ and now early world literature for way, way too long. And it's a funny thing about teaching because the students just keep getting younger and younger. And so I was talking about teaching this class to my consort, who is also a poet, and I said, you know, vis-a-vis the students' lack of interest in the ancient material. And I said, it's like reading Rumi to dolphins. And he said, that's a poem. You have to write that. Which is also how I came up with Charlotte Bronte, You Ruined My Life. He hears all my best lines, and then he gives me assignments. Yeah. Reading Rumi to dolphins doesn't pay much, but it's a living. I get transported, but what do they hear? Weird clicks from the dry, foreign creature standing above them with her clipboard, offering treats if they'll perform her tricks. While they're all supple sleekness, absorbed in their wet, thirsty games. They catch the fish I toss or miss and swim gamboling off to mate. I stand alone at the edge of the pool, ecstatic, chanting to the sky. Lost hat karma. Hollis is right, we really do like to go thrift shopping. Let's a little bit about this, yeah. Lost hat karma. I lost my favorite hat at the movies, but hope it will come back. I lost another I loved, a vintage mink swim cap that swam back upstream in a dark taxi cab on Bedford Street. Once, at the Salvation Army, I was trying on a bogey-style fedora when a man said, "Do you know what you have there?" "No," I said. "It's a Kavanaugh." He told me all about the hat, showed me the motto, "Apose ad esse," in its silk lining. "How do you know so much about this hat?" I said. "It's my hat," he cried. When I tried to give it back, he said he was moving to Florida, and the wife insisted he get rid of all his winter clothes. Apose, from the possible, ad esse, to the real. If the Gita is right, we'll leave these bodies behind, like hats in the dark theater when the movie's done. Geronimo. His name was what we yelled letting go of the rope swing. Geronimo! This name was not his name. We got it from old movies on TV. His name was Goyafle, one who yawns, till Mexicans killed his mother, wife, and children. His revenge took 28 years. His ninth and last wife was Azul. Called the worst Indian who ever lived, his band of 38 evaded thousands of troops till he surrendered to Longnose at Skeleton Canyon. Celebrated in old age, his face in every photo looks right at you, sadder than Jesus, warning. His sky torn, medals on his chest, trees at his heart, the gone world in his eyes. 1909, his last words, "I should never have surrendered. I should have fought until I was the last man alive." How many of you have been to the Museum of Natural History in New York City? Okay, there's a little poem about that and my son when he was younger. It's called Blue Whale. And there's a word in here, Wunderkammer, Cabinet of Wonders, which are sort of cabinets that 19th century explorers would put their strange objects into. That was sort of the root of where natural history museums came from. Blue Whale. We always head straight for the dinosaurs, then the ocean creatures. I'd boggle at the blue whales suspended overhead, more gargantuan than any titanosaur, born bigger than a bus. How can it hang here in the air or subsist in the sea on its broth of microscopic plankton? My son never pauses. He rushes to the sharks. The whale's so big and he's so small, he can't see it. The hall of ocean life is dark blue and dim. The whale a lighter shade. Maybe for him it merges with the room. I wonder how old he'll be when he first sees it, and what he'll say, and what hangs over me. How many years will I put in visiting this dim Wunderkammer until I'm big enough to see? Sorry, I hope that wasn't too sacrilegious. But you know I'm Jewish, right? Because you read my book. So. Whaleful. As pilotfish dart among sharks' jaws, or oxpeckers on hippos, there is something to eat everything. Crows on roadkill, flies on shit. On the ocean floor, iridescent worms eat the bones of whales. The banquet from one whale fall can last for 80 years, while squat lobsters devour wrecked ships. The Chinese, they say, eat everything, and you would too if you were starving. The grass-stained mouths of the Irish, deer stripping bark in an ocean of drifts. In the war, my father had to judge who had committed suicide and who was just trying to get high. Soldiers would drink anything, booze fermented from buried garbage or shoes, gasoline drained from tanks. Earth and sea teem with fleeting creatures, and what they mainly do is feast on each other. This is Ode to a Porcupine, and in it I quote the poet Li-Bai, or Li-Po as he used to be called, and he of course has all the best lines in the poem Fighting in the South Frontier, and I don't know whose translation it is. Ode to a Porcupine. The stench knocks us back, stronger than skunk, a putrid blood smell, like 10,000 Kotex left in a damp campground bathroom. It's lain a week in the rain among Adirondack grape camps, built by a remnant of European Jewry on ancestral Abenaki land in the twilight of American empire. Endless war, Babylon to Wounded Knee, Han invasions to Afghanistan. If one small mammal stinks this bad, what must a battlefield be? Li Bai says, crows and hawks peck for human guts, hang them on branches of withered trees. Soldiers are smeared on bushes and grass. The generals schemed in vain. Know that the weapons of war are utterly useless. The wise man uses them only when he must. Poor quill pig, we'll bury you beneath the pines where you lived and died a Taoist, not releasing a single needle unless attacked. Speaking of Kabbalah, recently they were trying to find what Barbie's new profession should be, and they were, had some kind of contest. So this was my idea, and it's Kabbalah Barbie. So there's a few references in here you may not know, obscure ancient things like Madonna, remember her? And Britney Spears, remember her? Remember when they were into Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And then there are some strange names for God in the Jewish tradition. You can't name God. So sometimes he's called Hashem, which literally means the name, which is an implication that he's nameless, or Ein Sof, which means literally something like without form. And there's another quote in here that's from the Zohar, the central text, but you don't really need to know any of that, I don't think. One more thing. Ruth Handler, who designed Barbie and Ken, was Jewish, and she named them after her two children, Barbie and Ken. Kabbalah Barbie. I know I don't look Jewish, but my mother was, so maybe that explains my new obsession. I've got my red string bracelet on, just like Madonna, except mine's wrapped around my waist. You think dolls can't pray? If everything is one, that includes plastic. Barbie is a spark of God, just as much as Britney Spears. I was created in your image, as you are in Hashem's. So why do kids love to torture me? They tear my head off, melt me in the microwave, the little Dr. Mengelas. Someone bigger must be hurting them. It's like play therapy. Trace that hurt back to its source, Ein Sof, the primal wound of becoming. Cut off. Free will's a flimsy excuse. How much free will do I have? It all depends on whose hands I'm in. Before Barbies, there were rag dolls, corn husk dolls, clay goddess figurines. Me and my bosoms, a corrupt remnant of those ancient mysteries. If you keep going back through the primordial light that always shines on us, even at night, from the blast of creation, the universe compressed to a point tinier than my pupil, a spark of impenetrable darkness. My head perfectly empty as the vacuum it emanates from. Anyway, that's what I like to think about when I'm not trying on new outfits. So I have recently written a companion poem. Did you read that Ken got a redo? Yeah. So I wrote a poem called Man Bun Ken. I'm very excited about it. It's so much fun to say, Man Bun Ken, Man Bun Ken. Man Bunkin. All right, this is a poem that I probably never should have written. I'm sorry. It's on a student paper comparing Emily Dickinson to Lady Gaga. Let's see. There are some quotes. There are some Emily Dickinson poem titles and some quotes from Emily Dickinson poems. And is there anything else you need to know? Oh, she said that her flood subject was immortality. And unbelievably enough, I had no idea that that connected to my book title until like the 17th time I read this poem and I put it together. I did my dissertation on Dickinson, so she probably got in there. Anything else we need to know? I think that's it. Oh, all the biographical details about Emily Dickinson are true, as far as we know, taken from biographies. On a student paper comparing Emily Dickinson to Lady Gaga. Of some work for immortality, this future teacher writes, Dickinson has willingly chose the quiet artist life rather than a life like Lady Gaga. It's 1862, I scrawl in the margin. There was no Lady Gaga. Unlike today's celebrities such as Lady Gaga, Emily used seclusion to create her own immorality. I circle Emily, immorality, and X out Lady Gaga. I dwell in possibility. Why not? Dickinson was known for her weird and wonderful piano playing. Perhaps she insisted listeners sit in another room because she was naked and wrapped in cellophane with a giant shoe on her head. Lady Gaga on YouTube in a little white dress recites, I'm nobody, holding a columbine. Dickinson let a doctor examine her only by walking, fully clothed, past a door left ajar to the room where he sat. Hello, Lady Gaga. And as for immorality, her flood subject, Dickinson was just like Gaga. When bursting all the doors, she dances like a bomb abroad. Cut to Lady Gaga performing Wild Nights, wearing only a rowboat. That's what Em was up to all night, singing and dancing around her room in nothing but spider web. Fame of myself to justify? Should I Google Lady Gaga? Or just give the girl an A? Giraffes. Very sad to know that giraffes are now in danger of extinction. Giraffes. I too was once young enough to take giraffes for granted. They seem no more marvelous than Labradors or elms, just one more form among a myriad to name and know. The older I get, the stranger they grow. I point at their impossible spindle legs and extension ladder necks, their staggering spots and space camel faces up there lunching on trees. Look, I say to Isaac, who shrugs. I already saw him, and turns away. Can we go look at the snakes? This one is Rosh Hashanah 5771, which was a few years back, and it was after some nut in Florida was threatening to burn the Quran. And I thought, I thought it was a topical poem and that it would not be, wouldn't last long, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to go out of style. And this was when my son was very small, and I had taken him to a children's service for Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, and in the Jewish tradition, supposedly that was the day that God created the universe, and so the rabbi had us sing Happy Birthday to the universe, and that inspired this poem. Rosh Hashanah 5771. Happy birthday, universe! We're having conniptions here on earth. We who flicker like moths take it upon ourselves to praise eternity, squabbling over what to call it, burning the other's metaphors, burning each other, as if we won't be gone fast enough. What could you possibly think of us, universe, in our zany hats? If you could even see them on our minuscule heads. What of our noisy games? We'd burn you too if we could. We like to party. We like to fight. We like to circle around and around and around your killer light. Oh, here's another fun little teaching poem from my early world literature class. It's called Athena's Blowjob. Afternoon class, nodding out over the Odyssey. I want to shock them awake. Imagine, I say, the terror of a world where you can't tell a beggar from a king, a pig from a man, a girl from a goddess. What if I turned into a bird and flew out the window, or shrugged my rags off in the doorway and started to shoot? Athena's turned Odysseus into a bum again, but for the big rendezvous with his kid, she yanks him out of the swineherd's hut to zap him with Olympic Botox and to fix his hair into hyacinth curls. I mean to say she gives him a blowout, but it comes out blowjob. Their stunned faces glow with sudden desire to comprehend. Freudian slip, I say, even while slipping this into my bag of future tricks, noting the guys flushed and awed, like the crew transformed by Circe from pigs back into men, younger, taller, more handsome than before. While we're being naughty, I'll do Why I'd Rather Be a Seahorse. This is also all true. I know, because I found it online. You know that male seahorses are the ones who give birth, right? So I was like, how can they be male if they give birth? And we had some interesting discussions on some of these subjects in class today. So this is what I found out. Why I'd rather be a seahorse. We'd court for days first. Changing color, swimming side by side, holding tails, or holding on to the same strand of seagrass. We wheel around each other in our pre-dawn dance, then do the true courtship dance, where he pumps water through his pouch to open and display its alluring emptiness. When I'm ready, we let go our anchor, drift upwards, snout to snout, spiraling as we rise till I stick my ovipositor into his pouch. I slim by a third as he swells. After we sink back into the waving seagrass, I'm the one who swims away. Alone, he jacks off into the sea. Fertilized, the eggs settle in, incubate for weeks. I drop by for morning greetings, swim off while he goes back to work, sucking up food through his snout. He's eating for 2,500 fry, hatched in his brood pouch. Out in the big sea, only a dozen will survive. I never see them. I need all my energy to create. He labors alone at night. When I return in the morning, the fry have drifted off, and he's ready for my next load. Almost at the end here, folks. So I'm going to do the title poem next, Immortal Medusa. You might have thought that it was about the Gorgon, but no, it is about an immortal jellyfish. And if you go online, you can find Mr. Immortal Jellyfish Man, who is a Japanese scientist who has been keeping a colony of these jellyfish alive. And presumably this could go on forever. And when he's not tending his jellyfish around the clock, he is singing karaoke, wearing a funny hat, and he does love songs to his jellyfish. I kid you not, it's really wild, so check it out. Immortal Medusa. Turritopsis dorni, the size of a pinky nail, a berry or blossom, in a clear bell jar trailing Medusa hair. Of all the animals, only this tiny jellyfish can do what we only dream, grow younger. Tentacles resorb, umbrella reverts, Medusa reattaches to the ocean floor and grows a new colony of polyps that bud into identical medusae, bypassing death. From the Caribbean, they've taken ship, a worldwide silent invasion. 500 million years old, sans brains, bones, or breath. They can do this forever. And I'm going to close with the last poem, Book of Sand. He said he was nothing but a grain of sand before time swept him too downstream. I wanted to give my father the book filled with photographs of sand, the sand magnified hundreds of times. There was no time. He could not see. Sand revealed to be perfect opalescent tips of spiral shells, mandalas of coral or sea urchin spines, lava and crystal gems the ocean cut. How we all walk, blind. He wants nothing now. Magnify, magnify. Thank you.